welcome back to Decoding Dragons, where we break down all things House the Dragon. We're your hosts, as always, Liza and Michelle, spilling the royalty and breaking down the fire for every episode.
Yeah, and we're really getting into the fire now for this season. So today we're going to be talking about what happened in House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 8, named The Lord of the Tides. What did you think of the episode?
First off, I am still reeling from this episode. I had a really fantastic morning. My friends surprised me with some gifts, some of the Dark Horse collectibles from the Game of Thrones collection, and they told me this morning that they had bought me a ticket to a virtual Game of Thrones George R.R. Martin event where you get signed copies of Fire and Blood. So I am shook, and I wanted to give a big shout out to them. I appreciate you out there, because I am in my feelings this morning, and I'm going to try to stay focused for our discussion today. But between the gifts and that big surprise and the episode, I am shook.
Yeah, geez, that's awesome.
So between the gifts and the episode, I am reeling, but I know that we did see Driftmark's succession, and we got to see Viserys climb the steps to the Iron Throne in a really, really moving moment between him and Daemon. And Vaemon's death stuck pretty close to the books, because Daemon is the one to execute Vaemon. So Daemon, Vaemon, these names are so similar. But yeah. So that stuck really close to the books, and we got to see the drama of the strong dinner. So we are definitely going to get into that, and the huge misunderstanding that happened at the end of the episode between Alicent and Viserys. My friends and I who watched the episode, we're kind of torn between whether Alicent was aware of the miscommunication and she knew it wasn't her son Aegon he was talking about, but she needed the king's word to legitimize her son. Or not legitimize, but you know what I mean, put him in power. Or it was an actual miscommunication, and she actually thought he was talking about Aegon II. But we are going to get into the huge repercussions of that and the foreshadowing and meaning of that in our fire section, where we discuss the Aegon that Viserys was talking about. So we are super hyped. But first, Michelle, what did you think of the episode? There was so much that went on in this one.
There was. So I did like this episode a little bit better than the last one. I know I was kind of a hater of the last episode. This one, at one point, I did kind of say to my fiance, we were watching it together, and I was kind of like, this series is like just taking the Game of Thrones name with it, and that's why it's hype. But it changed pretty quickly. I got a little bit bored through it, but it was such a good episode of all of the political pettiness and all of the conversation that was going on, and all the little subtle things. The reason it keeps me going and watching it is because of all of the subtle Easter eggs to the Game of Thrones that we do know. So all of the little changes in the King's Landing, or really the Red Keep, from Targaryen things to the Sept of Baelor things, and the high tower nods, and all of that stuff, that they're subtly changing it from Viserys' reign to Alicent's reign, essentially, because Alicent's kind of being a bitch. But no, it was really good. I really appreciated even the time jump, and so we got to meet Rhaenyra and Daemon's children, which is kind of a big deal at the end of the episode. And then even Daemon, I really appreciated. He's still Daemon, he's still kind of wild, but he's kind of gotten into his groove. I feel like he's a good dad, and he was to Baela and Rhaena also, but like you kind of see him being he's happy with Rhaenyra, and he's Daemon with Rhaenyra, and I kind of really appreciated that in this episode.
Yeah, they do seem very happy together, and they have Aegon III and Viserys II together, and right now Rhaenyra is pregnant with Visenya, and I thought that, like you said, he's really kind of coming into his own. He's found his groove. He knows who he is in the world right now. He's a father, he's a husband, but he also has all the sass, and he has all the attitude, and just the small remarks that he made throughout the episode just killed me. I was just, especially when he was talking about he was talking to Alicent about how she's like taking over rule, and he was just like, Whatever you say. So that was like spot on, Damon. It was fantastic.
Yeah, you make a good point where he's super observant, but he's like quietly observant and kind of annoyingly profound, and it's just kind of like, you're right, and it's annoying that you're right.
I got you. Yeah, he's much keener, I think, and he lets on, but everybody already knows that he's like hella smart. He definitely gives me like his dragon Caraxes vibes, like amongst the sheep, you know. So I did want to bring attention to him smelling the cup that Viserys's milk of the poppy was in. So there's actually an ongoing theory that the maesters that are loyal to House Hightower are not actually trying to heal Viserys. Like, they are either letting it run its course medically, or they are actively making it worse. Because, you know, Otto Hightower is after the throne, and Alicent is now after the throne. So, which just breaks my heart for him, and I think that the face Daemon made when he, you know, sensed something was off about the milk of the poppy, just kind of put it all into perspective and might have solidified that a little bit. Because, and then Viserys chooses not to take the milk of the poppy because he wants his mind clear for what he has to do for Rhaenyra. So I thought those were some fantastic, like theory Easter eggs, I guess. It's not exactly lore Easter eggs because he wasn't this sick in the book originally, but it is a good, like a theory Easter egg to give to viewers for sure, to let us kind of like ruminate on it a little bit.
Yeah, that actually made me a little sad when he was like, no, I don't want it because I don't want my brain to be muddy, or foggy, I guess. And it was just kind of like, are they actually trying to help him or not? That's a good point.
Yeah, and it broke my heart, and we are definitely going to talk more about Viserys because he crushed it in this episode. Like, this was his episode. So let's go ahead and jump into the blood section so we can get into like the super details of the episode and talk more about Rhaenys' decision to support Rhaenyra and Viserys. So we're going to jump into the blood right now. So I wanted to go in like episode chronological order with my questions for the blood section. So first off, we need to talk about Rhaenys because she starts off ready to oppose Rhaenyra's claim and seat herself on the throne. And then when Viserys walks in, she changes her mind and supports Rhaenyra. So why do you think Rhaenys changed her mind?
So I have conflicting thoughts about that. I'm not really sure if she actually changed her mind. I'm not convinced that she was fully going just for herself at the beginning. I do think that she was trying to oppose Vaemond, but I don't necessarily think she was doing it for herself. So I'm not sure that she actually changed her mind and went for Rhaenyra. I think she was just trying to be difficult and make her status not fully clear at the beginning for other people. I think she was always kind of for Rhaenyra, to be honest. And that might not be accurate at all. But she just doesn't seem like the type of person that was fully in it for herself, or she even might have just been in it for Baela, since she had her as her ward for a long time, and she might be hoping that Baela was going to come out on top. And so when Rhaenyra approached her with that idea of marrying her children, then she was like, yep, this is how I wanted it to happen. But I kind of always think that she was going to be for Rhaenyra the entire time.
Yeah, I got you. She's definitely a huge supporter of Rhaenyra in the books. So I think maybe you might be onto something there with her kind of wanting it to go to Helena's children. So once Rhaenyra kind of made the offer, she's like, all right, I'll still make it seem like I'll still play the Game of Thrones, you know, and kind of be a little ambiguous about this. But I think also seeing the condition Viserys was in and how much, because they are related, he's her cousin, I think. So, yeah. So I think seeing the condition he was in and how much he wanted it to go to Rhaenyra, I think might have moved her a little bit as well. Because, you know, it's essentially his dying wish that Rhaenyra be seated on the Iron Throne. And I do think she always had love for her cousin despite the way things went at the Great Council. So there's a strong possibility that, like you said, she got what she wanted with the Baela and Jace match, and then kind of went from there. And she may have said what she said about the Green Council bringing Rhaenyra to her knees, but Rhaenys having to stand on her own feet. Might have been kind of to boost Rhaenyra a little bit and give her, you know, some light a fire under her ass, basically, to use a dragon pun.
Right.
To kind of boost her up a little bit and be like, you need to get ready because they're about to drop the hammer. So I thought that was like a really good line too, and it really kind of sets those two women up to be pillars on their own, but also I'm excited to see them working together on Rhaenyra's council. Which brings me, speaking of Viserys' condition and how moving it was to see him in this episode, I do want to ask you, what did you think of Viserys in this episode as a whole, and especially at the dinner scene?
Yeah, so in the episode as a whole, Viserys killed it. Like you said it earlier, like it was his episode. He's basically a walking corpse. And he's kind of gross. His illness is really taking over. But as far as the dinner scene goes, it actually moved me a lot, being a full Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones fan, to see happiness in the Red Keep. We have literally never seen a full family and be happy in the Red Keep like that. Even if it was fake happy just for him, like, who cares? They were fully happy. There was a full family. It gets to me, because we've never ever seen that there. And it was, if it was fake, it was even just for him, and that never happened, you know. And when he went to bed and he was, you know, either having a full heart attack or just his heart was actually aching from the happiness, that's when shit went down, which really kind of shows you that he is holding everything together at the time. And I really appreciated that he kind of took that mask off, you know, Phantom of the Opera style off, and just is like, love me as your grandfather and your husband and your father and your brother, not as the king. Like, listen to me as more than just the king. And it was just really moving. I actually really enjoyed that scene a lot.
Same. And I really appreciated how he kind of basically made the statement that, you know, he is the king, but he's also a person. And all this succession crap and, like, the royalty, it comes down to the fact that they are all people. And they all want to be together as a family to a degree, but they're also each looking out for each other as people. Like, Alicent is looking out for her children. Rhaenyra is looking out for the Targaryen legacy and her family as well. And it made it so much more personal. And I really liked that scene where you could really see Viserys' spirit when he was walking into the throne room, and he wanted so badly to, like, walk up the steps on his own, and Daemon was there to help him get the last leg of the way. And a friend of mine sent me a link that the crown falling off was actually an accident that had happened during filming, but they improv'd, and so Daemon picks it up and puts it on Viserys' head, and they kept that moment. And I think it was such a phenomenal moment between these two brothers, because Daemon, as far as I know, Daemon never really wanted the crown, but he loved his brother. So him putting it on Viserys' head was such an impactful scene, and it's also a huge foreshadowing moment, because if I remember correctly, Daemon is the one who puts the crown on Rhaenyra's head. So he's actually the person who crowns Rhaenyra queen. So, which is just such a good foreshadowing of that moment, that he puts the crown on Viserys' head, and then Viserys' chosen heir, he puts it on her head as well. And I think it kind of puts Daemon in the middle of stuff a little bit more, and I think that's really, really nice. But I just thought that Viserys crushed it in this episode, and I see now why Martin was saying that the show gives Viserys Targaryen a tragic majesty that the books hadn't quite accomplished, because they couldn't spend this much time with him as a person. So
that's a really cool way to say a tragic majesty. I think that is perfect for Viserys.
Yeah, and he wanted so bad to be a good king, and he did the best he could. He wasn't an iron-fisted king, but he was a good person. And all he wanted was for his family to be happy. And you're right, at least he was able to have that gift and that last memory of them happy together as a whole. And he got to see, as far as I know, I guess, he got to see Emma one last time too. So the way they closed the episode was just like, shit's about to go down now. But it's really impactful, and I think it really cements his legacy as the person who was the glue holding these two factions together.
Yeah, and even potentially you see Alicent and Rhaenyra maybe shoving some shit under the rug before Alicent, you know, gets the information that she got at the end of the episode, which we'll get into. But you even see them kind of, and my favorite thing was Otto's fucking face whenever Alicent walks over to Rhaenyra and, after the battle with the children and after all of the shenanigans, Otto like breaks his neck and he's like, "What are you doing?" And Alicent's just like, "No, come back to us." And Rhaenyra's like, "Sure, I'll come back on Dragonback," which is actually kind of some foreshadowing there. But Alicent walks over to kind of, make amends, and Otto's like, "What?"
I know, and I really, first of all, Alicent was kind of a sympathetic character in the first half of the season, and now Rhaenyra is a sympathetic character in the second half. And you could argue it's because of her situation with her children, but she is always the first one to offer to make amends and to, be the bigger person in this scenario, basically. Like, okay, we can set this aside with a marriage. We can set this aside with goodwill. We can set this aside with some more ways of maneuvering around our situation here. But I think it meant a lot to Alicent that Rhaenyra recognized what Alicent did sacrifice and give up because of her situation between her father and Viserys. I think that that's what moved Alicent, that Rhaenyra, like, now that she's older, she's actually understands what it's like to be in the real world and not be, under her father's hand the whole time, basically. Mm-hmm. She's now able to understand what Alicent did have to go through to be where she is. And I think that's what really turned the tables on their relationship. But then we get into that misunderstanding where Viserys is talking to Alicent, and as far as we know, Alicent does not know he's talking about Aegon the Conqueror's dream. She thinks it's some continuation of the dream he told her about around the bonfire earlier on in the season, where her son Aegon is the one to unite the kingdoms. And there is a possibility she may have heard about the Song of Ice and Fire from a few people, Daemon and Rhaenyra, possibly. But it's not entirely likely that she knows what Viserys was talking about. So there's a 50-50 chance that she's aware what he's actually saying and is just using it as leverage on the situation to manipulate it further for her ends. Or she doesn't know about the Song of Ice and Fire and genuinely thought that he meant Aegon II and this was her husband's dying wish. So I'm excited to see that moving forward. I am not usually a fan of the misunderstanding trope because every time I read it in books, it just frustrates me until it gets figured out. But in this one, I think it is perfect for the plot because Rhaenyra and Alicent were just combining forces, basically. And now this misunderstanding is what is going to give each of them the drive needed to go through the rest of the series. Like, this one piece of information is going to be enough to motivate both sides equally nonstop. And I am so interested to see how it plays out.
Yeah, and that's actually a really perfect segue into our fire section, so we can go ahead and dive into all of the lore that we're talking about now. So let's go ahead and get into that. So, like we were talking about just a second ago with your lore of the Song of Ice and Fire and talking about Viserys' dying wish into which Aegon he was talking about, let's go ahead and dive into that a little bit more. So I actually, since I haven't read Fire and Blood, I don't know if that information that Viserys just gave Alicent will ever get to Rhaenyra. So we don't know if she actually knows which Aegon is being talked about. So let's go ahead and get into that, what Alicent heard from Viserys at the end.
Got you. So earlier in the episode, Rhaenyra asked Viserys if basically he really believed the Song of Ice and Fire was true and the Targaryen lineage was going to lead to the prince that was promised, or princess, we're still not sure if it's Dany or not, that kind of unites the kingdoms against the Long Night, right? So the prince that was promised prophecy is huge, so we'll just kind of stick with what we've got for now. But Viserys, at this point in history, is talking about an Aegon. Jon is also an Aegon later on, so that's interesting. But there's two Aegons at this point in the timeline. There's Aegon II, that is Alicent's son, and there's Aegon III, that is Rhaenyra's son. So Rhaenyra asks Viserys if he believes the Song of Ice and Fire is true and the prophecy is true, and if so, to defend her and her children. Viserys does defend her, thus confirming Rhaenyra's belief that it is her torch to carry at this point through her children. And Alicent later goes to Viserys to help him with his pain, and he thinks she's Rhaenyra as far as I know, and tells her that the prophecy is true. Someone named Aegon is going to be the one to basically unite the kingdom. And Alicent thinks that means Viserys wants her son Aegon II to be king. So we're getting into huge spoiler territory, and this is beyond season 1. So if you like legit do not want to know where this show is going, come back in like 7 minutes maybe.
Right.
So because we're about to go in on the lore. So after the entire Dance of the Dragons is over, most of the people who are in it now are dead. Like, dead. So, about as dead as you can get dead. So, Rhaenyra's son, Aegon III, survives them. And he is the one that the victorious supporters of Rhaenyra's side of the faction put on the Iron Throne. So he is obviously Daemon and Rhaenyra's son, and his first wife is Jaehaera Targaryen, which is Aegon II and Helena's daughter. So, in essence, Rhaenyra's son, Aegon III, does join these two factions back together by marrying Jaehaera from the Green faction. So, that kind of is where we're going to be at in the Targaryen timeline for now. But, so Rhaenyra's son and Aegon's II's daughter are going to get married and unite the faction, and that's kind of how House Targaryen goes on. And I believe that the succession continues from Aegon III to Viserys II. Could be wrong, but I think that that's how it went. And then all the way down the line, we find out that I think Jon Snow is Aegon VI. As those of you who have watched Game of Thrones know, right now we're on Aegon II and Aegon III. But in Game of Thrones, Jon Snow is actually given the royal title of Aegon VI. And it's really confusing because they were actually including Jon. There are supposedly 9 Aegons in the Song of Ice and Fire, but they only give the royal title to those who sit the throne. So while I think in reality Jon Snow would be Aegon the IX as far as given name, he's titled Aegon the VI because of his position as, you know, king in the north. So he's a king who sits the throne now. But that's why the prophecy Viserys is talking about is so important, because it literally goes from Aegon II's line with through Jaehaera, Rhaenyra's Aegon III's line when he marries Jaehaera, and it combines the families all the way down, and then, you know, Jon Snow and Dany are descended from them way down in Game of Thrones time, and they do defeat the Long Night as far as Shokan is concerned. So it's just a really impactful moment, and that's why it's going to give both sides of this faction the fuel they need to keep going forward. Holding that prophecy is enough to make Rhaenyra do anything to keep this legacy moving forward against the Long Night and carry this burden and this torch for her family. And Viserys' dying wish that, as far as Alicent knows, Aegon II is the prince who was promised, is enough to make her do anything for her family. So it's just like they've both been thrown into the flames for the same reason. They just think it's different things. And I think that's going to be an incredible motivator that's going to make you kind of understand where both sides are coming from, even though they're about to do some fucked up shit.
Right. Okay, perfect. That was great. So we will get corrections in the comments if we are wrong, but
we hope we're right.
Hopefully not. So we're going to go ahead and get into Aemon, because we have to talk about Aemon's crazy ass in this episode. So I'm going to start it with asking you, do you think the serving of the pig at dinner, right, the pink dread, is what caused Aemon to make the strong speech at dinner? And then we can kind of elaborate on Aemon from there.
I got you. Okay, so I think we're gonna love to hate Aemon. I think it's not really a Jaime situation, because in my opinion, he stays a piece of shit through the whole show. So that's just my very personal biased opinion. So do with that what you will. But we are gonna love to hate this son of a bitch. So
I already kind of do.
Right. So we all know there's like this long-standing anger kind of festering between him and Rhaenyra's sons. There's also the debt to be paid with his missing eye. And you see him looking across the table at Luke like, I'm going to get you back for the fact that you took my eyeball, you know? And Luke starts laughing at him, which I think kind of sends him over the edge, because Luke's like, you're still bitter about this? It's been like 6 years. I got you. Like, I won that shit, you know, because it was a numbers game, and Aemon did kind of get teamed up on. We'll be fair. We'll be fair. He got teamed up on. So Luke kind of looks across the table at him and is like, he's laughing at him. I think that kind of sends him over the edge, because regardless of what everybody says, it is true. They are not her trueborn sons. But at this point, someone did point out on our last episode that the king can legitimize basically whoever he wants because of his position as king. So as far as the regency is concerned, it's going straight through Rhaenyra to Jace and Luke. So, and that's kind of what counts at that time. So I think Aemon has just had this like long festering anger that's just going to boil up, and he wants that debt repaid, you know, like the whole eye for an eye thing. Which brings me to another really big spoiler that we are going to talk about in our Dragon Dream section. I'll hold off for now. But they are moving through the timeline a little faster than I thought they were. So there's a slight chance we're going to get a really big event at the finale episode. So we only have 2 episodes left, people. So stuff is getting real. But let's see. So I think the pink dread may have started it. The eyeball definitely intensified it. And I think Luke laughing at him was just like the icing on the cake. But I thought that moment where, okay, Aemon is a good fighter. Jace and Luke are not that good of fighters compared to Aemon. Aemon is like right up there with Criston Cole, who knocked Dark Sister out of Daemon's hand. But we all know that Daemon could beat Criston's ass if he really wanted to. Let's be real. So the moment that Daemon stood up and he kind of put Jace to the side, he's like, no, if he wants to fight somebody, he can fight me. And I was like, and then Aemon wisely walks off because he's like, I am not about to win against Daemon Targaryen in this room right now. So I just thought that was it was a good like father moment for Daemon. He's like, I got you. If he wants to fight somebody, he can fight me. And it sets up the rivalry because there is a big long running rivalry between Daemon and Aemon. It just goes all the way to, as far as I know, the end of the Dance of the Dragons, before like the rest of the political stuff takes over and the aftermath happens. So keep your eye on those two because the beef is real.
No, but I really liked that little standoff between Daemon and Aemon because it was just kind of like you said, it was just kind of like, I got you. And he's like, okay, we're not going to do it here. We'll do it later. I got you.
We'll save it. Yeah. it's like we're gonna fight. It just won't be today. You just wait till I get better.
Exactly.
Yeah. I feel like he took one look at Daemon. He's like, I'm probably not gonna win this fight. It'd be fun to watch because they're both really good as far as their skill with like, you know, weaponry is concerned, but it would not have gone well in Aemon's favor in my opinion. But you guys can also debate about that in the comments on for those of you who have read Fire and Blood, you know how the rivalry ends, and I won't overspoil, you know, I'll keep it, you know, in the sections. But you guys know how the rivalry ends. But if they had fought at that moment, are we all in agreement that Daemon would have won? I think so. So actually, now that we're into like the big lore, we should probably jump into our Dragon Dreams where I can kind of start talking about what we're going to expect to see in the next couple episodes. So let's hop into that right now. Alright, so now that we're in our Dragon Dreams section, I'm going to super spoil. That's what we're going to call it from now on. We're going to super spoil. Okay, so we've seen the succession for Driftmark settled, so that's done. Corlys, as far as the books are concerned, is going to stick around. Obviously, you never know what's going to happen in the show, but I want more of Corlys Velaryon. He's badass. So I do hope that we can expect to see a lot more of him in the future, more than we saw in this season. They did stay pretty close to the books where Daemon executes Vaemond, so that was close enough. And so the next episode sees the small council meeting. So in essence, in like a very summarized way, Viserys dies, and Alicent and her small council don't tell anyone that he's dead. And they just leave him there in his bed for days while they arrange to have Aegon II crowned. So, and they don't tell Rhaenyra. She doesn't find out her father died until I think someone brings word of it to her. So what we're probably going to see is that small council meeting and them kind of doing the plot. And I did see the crown go on the green cushion, so there's a strong possibility we will see Aegon's coronation. I have 2 theories. Either they're going to, because Aegon gets crowned first in King's Landing, and Rhaenyra gets crowned later because, word had to travel on Dragonstone. So I think the next episode is titled The Green Council, and the last episode is titled The Black Queen. because of Rhaenyra, right? So my theory is either they're both going to get crowned in the same episode, and then the finale is going to be Rhaenyra coming into her power and making some moves, or they're going to split it up, and Aegon gets crowned in this next episode, and Rhaenyra gets crowned in the finale. If they go a little faster, and they both get crowned in this upcoming one, there's a chance we're going to see the dance over Shipbreaker Bay. And this is the sole reason why I hate Aemond. Big spoilers for everyone involved. The dance over Shipbreaker's Bay happens very, very early in the official Dance of the Dragons, after both Aegon II has been crowned and Rhaenyra has been crowned. They are trying to call their banners and see who's loyal to who, because they're about to split into official factions for the war, the civil war between the families. So both Aemond and Luke end up at Storm's End to get, to speak to the person who's sitting on the Baratheon seat of power at the time. And, they share there's an exchange of words, and obviously some details happen, but to keep it short for the sake of our recap here, what happens is Luke leaves first on his dragon, which is very young. It's almost basically only as old as Luke is, pretty much, essentially. And Aemond follows him on Vhagar, and we have all seen the size of Vhagar. And it's like filling the dots from there. I think it's storming, and Aemond wants to get revenge for his missing eye. So he and Vhagar attack and kill Luke and his dragon in the air in the dance over Shipbreaker's Bay. And I always thought that one moment was like the nail in the coffin for this war. Like, after that point, Rhaenyra was at no turning back point, obviously. Because at that point, it became blood for blood. So that's why I hate Aemond so much, because that was... Obviously, nothing is fair in Game of Thrones, but we have all seen Vhagar at this point. We have all seen how good of a fighter Aemond is. And Luke was in front of him, like he had already left. He wasn't going to stay and fight. He had left. So it was just a low-down, dirty move. Very cowardly, and I am just not here for it. And it was also, no pun intended, overkill for losing an eye. So, let's take another eye, dude. You don't have to kill the whole person right. It's attached to. So we may see that in the finale, depending on how they pace the coronation. So that is like the summary of our timeline of very painful and heart-wrenching events that are to come.
Man, that's terrible about them leaving Viserys in the bed.
It was so sad when I read it in the book, but you spend more time with him on the show, and you kind of see more of like the type of person that he is and the caliber of person he is, that he cares so much about his family, and he's just had this wonderful dinner, and then Alicent knows that they can't tell Rhaenyra right away because she's going to come claim her seat, and now she thinks that her son is supposed to do that. So they just leave him there to rot for a while before I think someone escapes and takes Viserys' crown to Rhaenyra, and she wears Viserys' crown, I think. Which actually reminds me, we did meet the Cargyle twins, Eric and Eric. So,
yeah.
So they are really important. There's a reason they were so featured in this episode, okay? So you got to see them fighting, and they fought prominently in the yard, and you also see them throughout the castle. So they are important. I think we get to see why they're important in the next episode. They have a very important duel because they're twins. One of them stays on Alicent's side and one of them stays on Rhaenyra's side. And because they look so much alike, it's a perfect opportunity to infiltrate Rhaenyra's faction. So, but there are several different accounts, but the account that I like the most is where the two brothers meet. And, obviously, as soon as they see each other, they know something's up because they're not supposed to be there. Like, only one of them is supposed to be in one place at a time. So they obviously automatically know it's a plot to either maybe come assassinate somebody, kind of come stir up some trouble, do something else. And they fight, to the death to keep it from happening, and each one for their own side. So they are very important. So I saw them and I immediately knew, I was like, oh, it's about to get messy. It's about to get bloody up in here. So we are in for it. We are in for heartbreak and tragedy and the real beginning of the fire and the blood. So there's going to be a lot for me and Michelle to talk about. We're going to have a lot of tea to get into and a lot of fire to talk about. So brace yourselves, buy some steel cages for your hearts, because we are now officially, as soon as Viserys died, like the Dance of the Dragons started. So we have made it, people. We spent 8 episodes on this, like the prelude and the build up, and now the fire is officially here. So we'll have a lot to talk about. We're going to be back every Tuesday on CouchSoup.com during season 1 to recap the latest episode of House of the Dragon.
So you can watch us on CouchSoup.com on Tuesdays, or it gets released on YouTube on Wednesdays on every podcast platform of your choice. So be sure to hit that like button. Let us know in the comments what lore you'd like us to dive into next, and any of the prompts that we already mentioned during the episode. And then we will see you next week with all the fire and soup.